What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with Tesla SPY, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have the FOMC meeting alongside Jerome Powell, the big guy, giving a speech. I'll break down how all of this could affect the markets. But just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on invested cash. The offer ends in just about 2 weeks from now. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So Tesla saw this nice push up to the $480 area of resistance. Then we saw this little rejection coming back down towards 460, bounced back up towards the end of the day at this 480 resistance again, and then we closed very close to that. So Tesla did a very, very good job at holding up, outperforming the market. But the question remains, will Tesla break that tough resistance at 480 or will Tesla see a rug pull? And that's going to be very dependent on what happens with tomorrow. That's why I want to talk about some news and data first, and I'll break down more details about the charts for Tesla and the others. There was a lot of news that came out for Tesla. Okay, so we had Mizuho Securities analyst known as Vijay Rakesh. He upgraded his Tesla price targets to an outperform rating relative to before when we used to have a neutral rating. And now they have a price target of about $515 per share from $230 from before. So a big increase in what they're expecting. They see Tesla going to the 500s, and they believe that what's happening with the next administration is that there's going to be a loosening in regulation for autonomous driving rules. And it's going to be leading to a lot of benefits for Tesla, helping them achieve their goals a lot quicker. They also believe that Tesla is not only going to be a lot more profitable than its counterparts, but these new changes to the tax credits could end up helping Tesla the most because it's going to hurt their competition more. And with Tesla benefiting from AI, that's going to be an alternative catalyst to help it really offset that. So that's what their main perspective is so far. They also talked about battery storage technologies and charging infrastructure that allow for better potential things that could help them with revenue and such. So good stuff, in my personal opinion, especially as they believe in their ability to scale the robotaxi and a lot of growth because of that. So very, very bullish $515 price targets from Mizuho Securities. Then we also had this news right over here about what's happening with Tesla's new launch. So there's been a lot of talk coming out from mainstream articles about how next year Tesla has a goal of launching its robotaxis, but just know that they're not going to be fully autonomous to start things off. Of course, this is still a work in progress. We're not really there yet, but what's going to help them really do that is the fact that they're going to be using human operators. They're going to be standing by just for the safety of their users, and that's going to be very important. So for now, that's what they're going to be doing. The vehicles will be using autonomous technology, of course, but they're not going to be fully autonomous. They'll just have this on the side. This will help them in case there's any issues. They'll help to manage things, look around, and how things are looking. And as time goes on, Tesla will eventually continue to increase this usage. Now, autonomous driving technology is not just going to be for the robotaxi. Eventually, it's going to be for the Model 3s and Model Ys and many other models. But for now, Tesla is working to develop that technology, and they're going to be prioritizing the robotaxi's launch as one of their biggest things for the time being. So I think it's very, very bullish news, especially because now that they have some teleprompters, this could already start Tesla to help build up their revenue to really start things off. And then as time goes on, I think that it's going to maintain even more of a bullish stance once they become more and more independent and they don't end up needing these teleprompters. On top of this, there's this news right over here about the Chinese sales that came out in terms of their insurance registrations. Unfortunately, we did see a slight decrease right over here. So if you look at the overall numbers, there was a slight decrease that happened over the last week. This is the 50th week of the year, if anything, and we did see their sales slow down just a little bit. So if you look at the numbers, at least thus far, they're right over here. We had about 18,500 insurance registrations last week in China. That's down about 15% from 22,000 from the previous week before that. That's fine. It still is one of the top weeks of this entire year, and they're going to be fine at least moving forward. Now, what's going to matter is how we do during the last final weeks, especially considering that we're approaching the end of the year. So hopefully Tesla sees some very, very strong numbers and offsets this, and we get some nice growth for deliveries. I'll be waiting for the reports in just about two weeks from now for the overall quarter and the end of the year. Tesla saw about 128 million in volume. That's well above average, and that's awesome to see. Whether or not this pump continues now depends on other factors. Also, just know that Mizuho gave Tesla an outperform rating. Besides that, the price-price ratio is exploding as Tesla's greatly outperforming the market still. Wednesdays are historically green about 48% of the time, so they do tend to be a little bit weaker for Tesla. And we tend to see more volatility at 11 o'clock a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Besides that, that's all I'm seeing on the news that's very significant. What do I see for Tesla moving forward? Well, like I said before, Tesla's fighting at the 480 area, and whether we break this or not is going to depend on Jerome Powell. That's why I want to focus on that part. So the market was kind of flat, a little bit more red today. We saw a lot of stocks slowing down. We had AVGo, Nvda, Google, Meta, Amazon. The majority of stocks were in the red. Some stocks outperformed, such as Microsoft and Apple, and Tesla was the big outperformer as it was up 3.64%, showing a lot of strength compared to the market. Now, despite that, just know that there's going to be a big catalyst coming out. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, December 18th, 2024. I just want to make it very clear that there's not really much that's coming out, at least for tomorrow. There's not really anything that's too significant in the morning. But then as time goes on, at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the Fed interest rate decision coming out. That's going to lead to some volatility. So we're expecting a 25 basis point cut by the Fed. And then at 2:30 p.m., we're expecting the Fed press conference, which is when Jerome Powell is going to be giving his speech. So we'll see what all of this leads to. When we start off tomorrow, I do expect a little bit of volatility in the morning. Then we're going to see a lot of choppy sideways price action. Then expect a big move depending on the rates decision that they end up making. If they give us a 25 basis point cut, there might be a small pop that comes. And then whether that pop leads to a big pump or a big rug pull will then depend on Jerome Powell's speech during the press conference and what he says during the Q&A session. So right now, the market thinks there's a 95.4% chance the Fed gives us a 25 basis point cut. That's most likely what they're going to do. So there could be a little pop because of that. But that's not going to be sustainable. What matters more is going to be what Jerome Powell says. Oh, and also I forgot to mention, at 2 p.m., the Fed is not just giving us the rate decision, they're also giving us the interest rate projections for the first and third years moving forward. So look for what we're expecting for the projections for the next couple of years and what we see for interest rates in terms of the decision at 2 p.m. So look for some volatility then. And then at 2:30 p.m., that's when Jerome Powell opens his mouth. When Jerome Powell starts speaking, he's also going to be asked about CPI. So we'll see what he says about that. Core CPI has been very flat for the last couple of months. But if you look at the last 2 months, we've seen a slight increase in all items CPI. So if Jerome Powell takes a stance where he is more hawkish and he's very, very cautious and says things that the Fed has to be very careful, take their time on what they're doing, that could cause the market to dip a little bit. But if Jerome Powell continues to say the same narrative that everything's okay, the economy is strong, and the US is basically approaching the 2% inflation rate, they're not really worried about this, that's going to be bullish for the markets. So we'll see what Jerome Powell says. His tonality is going to be very important for tomorrow. Besides that, just know that we have General Mills announcing their earnings. We have Micron. Then for Thursday, we have Nike, FedEx, and a bunch of others. So look for some volatility because of those, at least for those specific stocks, not for the broader markets. The market's neutral. Heading into FOMC, we'll see what kind of shift that makes. Momentum is still greedy for the S&P 500, but we'll see if that shifts as well. And two more things. The put to call option ratios at extreme greed. Typically, when it's this low, this signifies the market may be topping. So not a guarantee, though. We'll have to see. We'll see if this spikes because of Jerome Powell or not. So give that some time. And volatility is neutral right now for the markets. We'll have to see if this increases or not, depending on what Jerome Powell says. So we'll see about that. With that being said, let's now just focus on the charts and nothing else. As far as the charts go, just know that Tesla's looking pretty good so far. It's holding up very, very nicely, making higher highs and higher lows. But there's a new range that's being established. We have 460 as our main support. We have 480 as our resistance. If we break 480, we're looking for essentially 490 as our target. If that breaks 500, becomes a nice potential target as well. If we end up losing 460, we end up getting a big rejection here. We could be dumping all the way down towards the 450 area. That's going to be very close to where our 20 EMA aligns. So that all depends on Jerome Powell. Going into tomorrow, I think that Tesla's going to be attempting to test 480, and we'll have to see what we do from there. Might be a little pop and a drop like we saw today and some consolidation. So I expect some sideways price action as we open up between 460 and 480. And then when the decision comes out, we might see a little pop in Tesla. We could be trying to get back up to all-time highs because of that. Then we might come back down after that. So that's what we're seeing, at least for the first half of the day. Then we have Jerome Powell starting his speech, and I don't know what's going to happen during that. Anything could happen because when he opens his mouth, the market could be making some crazy moves. If he pumps the markets, Tesla could be pushing for the 490s to get very close to 500. If he gives us a big rug pull, we could be looking for Tesla to come back down to the 450 area. So at that point, the big move depends on Jerome Powell. Expect a lot of chop tomorrow. There might be a little pop once we get the Fed decision, and then it all depends on what Jerome Powell says, so give the market some time. For SPY, we're basically stuck between this support at 602 with resistance at 608 going back and forth and back and forth. Now we're at the lower end of this support, so we'll have to see which way we end up going. But just know this, we're stuck for now. Now, whether or not we get a big break depends on what Jerome Powell says. But just know we're on a bit of a downtrend as we're making lower highs here. We haven't been able to really, we've been holding towards the bottom of this range for the most part. So that makes me a little bit more concerned, if anything. So we could be going, either way, if anything. But let me just make it very clear. Tomorrow, when we open, look for a little pop and some consolidation. Then we're going to just be trading sideways as time goes on. Then when Jerome Powell starts his speech, when the decision comes out, there might be a little pop before we come back down. And then when Jerome Powell starts his speech, this is either going to be launching to new all-time highs. If we break 608, we're looking for essentially 610. Then all the way up to about 612 and 615 is our targets. SPY is going to be launched very high if we end up getting a break thanks to Jerome Powell. If we see the opposite, if Jerome Powell gives us the rug pull and we end up losing 602, we're looking for 600, 598, and 595 as our targets or below. So it could go either way. So once again, look for some volatility in the morning, consolidation, lots of sideways price action as the day goes on. Might be a pop when the decision comes out and maybe a dip afterwards. And then Jerome Powell's speech either launches this to new all-time highs for 612 to 615, or we get a big rug pull all the way down towards 600 to 598 or below that. We'll have to see which way we go, so give this some time. For ES, just know this looks a little bit more bearish. If Jerome Powell causes a big pump, we're going to be looking for an attempt to get up to about 61.40. Might see a pop and some consolidation to start things off, but then if Powell pumps us, we're going to try to break to all-time highs. If Powell gives us the rug pull, we want to see this thing break 61.02. That's going to be close to our 20 EMA. If that fails us, we're looking for 60.80 is our target, so we'll just have to see which way we end up going. But overall, there's going to be a risk of some downside, so give this some time, and we'll see what this ends up leading to for SPY. For Nvda, we're trying to rebound right here. We'll have to see what it does. There might be a little attempt to push back up to about 133, and we'll see if we get a rejection or not. So look for a little push tomorrow and some consolidation. Whether we break 133 and start pushing for 137, or if we get a big rug pull and we start losing support to dip to 125, it all depends on Jerome Powell. So we'll see what the big guy ends up causing. So keep that in mind. Look for a push tomorrow morning consolidation, and then Jerome Powell's going to either launch this into the mid 130s or give us a big rug pull back down below the low of the day from today. For Bitcoin, we might be retesting 104,975, so there's a chance we come back down. If Powell gives us a bounce, we're looking for 108,000 plus. If we lose this, we're looking for 102,000, so it could go either way depending on what Jerome Powell says. For others out there, we have NQ. This is stuck in the middle. If we lose 22,200, we're going to be looking for a dip back down for 22,150. And if we fill this gap and lose support at 22,000 flat, we're looking for 21,800. If we get a big pump and Jerome Powell causes a bounce, we're looking for a break to 22,500 plus. I think we push upon open and consolidate for a bit, and then when the decision comes out, we could pop a little bit. I think they're going to give us a cut, but that also depends on what they say for the projections of rates. And then Jerome Powell's either going to launch this up or cause a big rug pull. Could go either way. We do have a gap to fill, so I do want to say I'm a little bit concerned about that. So this does favor downside a bit more, but we'll have to see just to be safe. The QQQ could be dipping closer to about this 533 to 531 area, very close to our 20 EMA. Might be a small dip here, and we'll see if we get a big bounce towards 540 or not. Jerome Powell's either going to launch this towards 540 to 542, and then after that, we'll have to see if we get a big rug pull. That could also lead to a lot more downside. If we end up losing the support at 532, we're going to be looking for a dip all the way down towards 525. So it could go either way. If we lose 530, we're going to be dumping a lot lower to 525. If we get a big push and we break the all-time high, we're looking for 540 to 544. My gut tells me this might dip a little bit upon open and consolidate. And then we'll see if Jerome Powell launches this up or down. That's going to be the very, very big move to be coming. Apple looks a little bit stronger right now, at least from a technical standpoint. We could be looking for an attempt to get up to 254. We'll see if we break past that or not, so please keep that in mind. It could go either way. If we break 254, we're looking for 256. If we get a rug pull, we're looking for a move back down towards 250. Could go either way, so give this some more time. Might be dipping and consolidating for now, and then we'll see if we launch in either direction, so give this some more time to develop. For Netflix is just consolidating right over here. We could be dipping a little bit lower. However, I think there's a chance that we end up dipping closer to about that $911 area. So it might see a small dip. We'll see if we bounce or not to the 920s or if we get a big rug pull back down for 900. So it could go either way as we have this bearish divergence. Watch this very carefully as we have a double top and we have this rejection that could be forming towards the 911 area. That could lead to a move back down towards 900. As we're seeing some weakness kind of building on this chart, it does favor downside a little bit more. But whether we get the big moves to the downside is going to depend on if we bounce off 911 or if we end up losing it. And that's going to be dependent on Jerome Powell. So tomorrow, look for a little bit of a dip in consolidation. We'll see if we bounce or not, depending on the big guy. MSTR is the same setup. If we reclaim 400.7, we push back up for 412. And if we lose support right here around 385, we're looking for a dip back down towards 386. I think that we might be dipping a little bit lower for like the 378 area, and we'll have to see if we bounce or not, depending on what the factors end up leading to. But there is going to be a risk of some downside looking at the 4-hour and the daily. So we'll have to see if that ends up being the case. So give this the time it needs as there's a little bit of weakness building on MSTR. For Celsius, we look a little bit more bearish. We have kind of like a head and shoulders like structure. If we reclaim 30, we're looking for a push back up to 32. If we end up losing 30, we're looking for a dip back down for 28. I'm favoring this is going to be dipping to about 28 to fill this imbalance. It looks a little bit more bearish to me, but whether or not we continue to dump depends on Powell. So there might be a dip to 28, and Powell could cause a big bounce back up to 30 plus, or it could cause a bigger rug pull back down to 26. So look for 28 and some consolidation, then we'll see what Jerome Powell causes. It does look a little bit more bearish. Supermicro is looking so. It could attempt to rebound here. So this is what I see essentially happening. There might be like a little dip here that comes tomorrow morning and consolidation. And then whether Jerome Powell causes a bounce, it might, push from there. If not, we're going to be dumping like this. So look for a small dip, and we'll have to see if we bounce off that to establish a higher low. If not, if we end up losing this low right here around 30, I'm going to be expecting us to dip all the way down to the 28s or below. So it all depends. Tomorrow, look for a small dip, and we'll see if we bounce or not, depending on Powell, but just keep that in mind. I think Powell looks a little bit weaker here. We might be retesting the 73 flats area, if not 71.67. Might be a small dip, and we'll see if we bounce thanks to Powell back up towards the 77 area, or if we get a bigger rug pull. Look for some downside, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For Rivian, we might be retesting 14.44. We'll have to see if we bounce or not. If not, we could be dipping towards 14 flats, so give that some more time to develop. For SoFi, we're trying to rebound right here. This might attempt to push higher, but just be a little bit careful. I think that we push back up towards 16.8 to 17. If Jerome Powell launches this, we're going to try to break this high to remain bullish. If not, it's possible, and what looks a little bit more probable is we reject here and come back down to these lows close to the 50 EMA. So this kind of move looks a little bit more probable, but just to be safe, we'll see depending on what Jerome Powell says. So look for a push towards 17. We'll see if we reject or not. Keep that in mind. The Russell looks a little bit weaker as we're losing the support right here. We need to hold above 231, otherwise we're at risk of 230 and potentially 228. So keep that in mind, guys. There's a little bit of weakness that's building on this chart. We could rebound for 232, and then we could start dipping back down for 230. So give that some more time to develop. AMD looks weaker. It's still looking weak right here. It has not gotten a bounce. It's looking for 122 as a potential target. So we'll have to see what happens after that. It could be dipping. Then we'll see what happens with Jerome Powell's speech. So just keep that in mind. ARM, it needs to reclaim 145 to turn back up. Otherwise, it's at risk of dipping. Might be retesting 140 before it attempts to rebound. So keep that in mind. Coinbase looks a little bit weaker. I could see this retesting 305. I do see a risk of that. Well, we'll see if we bounce or not, depending on what Jerome Powell says. For Amazon, we look a little bit weaker. We have a slight bearish divergence. We're looking for essentially 229. We'll see if we bounce or not. Might retest 229 if Powell gives us the bounce. We're looking for 235 after that. If we lose 229, though, we're looking for a dip back down to 225. So look for a dip, and we'll see if we bounce or not. For Meta, we might be retesting essentially 612. We'll have to see if we bounce off that or not, as we have like a head and shoulders. So I expect 612 to be tested. We'll see if we bounce back up for the 620s or if we get a big rug pull all the way down towards 600. So it could go either way. For Microsoft, we have a double top like structure. If we end up dipping right here, we're looking for essentially 452 as our target, so it could be dipping towards that. If we bounce here, we're looking for a push back up to form like a cup and handle. So something like this, right? This could be like a like a cup that's forming, and then we could be forming like a handle like this if we're bullish. But if we lose the support here, we're going to be turning a lot more bearish if 449 breaks. I anticipate it's going to dip a little bit, and we'll see if we bounce or not, depending on what it does right over here. That's going to depend on Jerome Powell, so we'll have to see about that tomorrow. I think Google's also going to be dipping to about 193.7. So look for a small dip. If we bounce thanks to Powell, we will try to break past 200. If we get the rug pull, we're looking for a move back down to 186. It all depends on the big guy. GameStop looks a bit more bullish. Could be looking for 32 as a target. AMC looks a little bit more bullish. If it breaks 4.27, we're looking for 4.4 as our target. DJT looks a little bit more bearish. Might be retesting 36.98. We'll have to see if it bounces or not, but there might be a small dip coming. The VIX looks a little bit more bullish. This could be signifying there's about to be a big move in the markets. Could this mean the market's about to get a rug pull? It depends. We're at resistance on the VIX at 15.92. If we break that, we're looking for the 17s. If not, we could reject. So it all depends on what the big guy causes. The 10-year Treasury yield is also waiting for what happens with interest rates. So we'll see if this gets a rug pull or not. And finally, the dollar is kind of flat here. It's on a slight uptrend. As you guys can see, we have a double bottom, and this is like a big George W. So if we bounce off this, we could start launching higher, and that could cause the market to dip. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. So Tesla might see a lot of consolidation tomorrow. It might attempt to retest all-time highs, then consolidate in the range of the day today. And whether we get a new break closer to 500 or if we get a bigger rug pull, it's going to depend on the big guy, Jerome Powell. So get ready, guys. And I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day. I'll see you guys tomorrow for another update about what I see for the Fed and the markets. And I'll be back very, very soon for another video. Thank you for listening, and peace out.